Hi, all, and welcome to the Found Artist Files, the podcast that delves into real stories that inspire, uplift, and remind you that no matter who you are, your story matters. Every journey, no matter how big or how small, is worth celebrating. Here, we'll explore the powerful narratives of everyday people, artists, creators, and dreamers just like you, sharing the struggles, triumphs, and lessons learned along the way. So keep going, keep creating, and remember, you're crafting your own unique path, one story at a time. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode. Today, we have Emily May Jampel with us. Hi, Emily.
Hi. So nice to be here.
Thank you so much for being with us. Excited to learn a little bit more about you, a little bit more about what it is that you do in the industry. So why don't we kick it off with, who are you and what do you do in the industry?
Great question. I would say I'm a filmmaker. I write, produce, direct. I'm mainly a director. I also act a little bit. I kind of consult as well. I do a mix of things. But I grew up in Honolulu. I've been in New York for like 12 years. And for the past few years, I made a transition from working as a development executive at a production company to directing.
Awesome. So you touched a little bit more about like that you didn't go to film school and that you had more of like a non-traditional approach into the industry. How did your approach kind of shape the way that you've learned and what you kind of prioritize as a filmmaker?
Yeah, my approach, just like how I kind of came into the industry and filmmaking.
Yep.
Yeah, I went to college, undergrad for liberal arts at like a experimental college in NYU where you design your own major. And then I kind of came into film just from interning. So like everyone I think just, it might have been a culture thing of just a lot of people who go to school in the city, especially at NYU, they were really intense about internships. So I just ended up looking at different things that were posted, and I kind of like snuck my way onto the NYU's film school internship listserv. And so I interned at like a tiny film distribution company and like 2 production companies while I was in school. And that was my first introduction to like film as a job. And then I kind of then did a pivot of like after I graduated, I just like worked in various positions at different production companies in the city.
Nice. So you were always sort of like interested in the film space, and then you just sort of went and found more like roles to see what was sort of interesting into you, and then kind of gather some experience within the actual industry itself.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really know. I enjoyed watching films in, high school and college, but it was the same way that I, enjoyed listening to music or like eating chocolate. Like
how can this be a career?
And I wasn't like, maybe I'll try to work here. I didn't know it was a thing that was a job at all that you could do until I started interning. And then I saw like actual like offices and companies where like there were all these people who would like have like very serious looking corporate meetings, but would like talk about story and like screenwriting structure. And I was like really fascinated by that. And then, I think after I graduated, I was just like, how do I find a job in New York so I can keep living here? And those were all just one was in a distribution company and one was a production company, but it was very like various like office setting film jobs. So I was working in the industry after graduating, but it was still like so far from like, I'd say the creative or like being on a set or anything like that. So that kind of came later on.
Got it. So you were more of the business side versus the creative side at first. So starting out on the business side, what do you think was one of the most valuable things that you learned from working at the production company early on?
I think I learned the most at the most recent place I worked. I learned so much from working with those producers. I think mainly it gave me a good kind of it demystified a lot of the industry side of things. I would see them working with a lot of filmmakers and directors over several projects. So a lot of the directors I remember that they worked with were like filmmakers who maybe like the young, hot, like directors at like Cannes or Sundance with their first features, and their movies were sold for like millions of dollars. But then I got to kind of see what their careers looked like 10 years later, kind of, and how it was still a challenge to get their next projects off the ground. I think it just kind of gave me like a really realistic zoomed out impression of the industry and just like career trajectories. It's not about like racing to make the first one, because it's the challenges continue.
Can you remember the moment that you realized that storytelling through film could be something that you'd pursue seriously?
Ooh, that came a lot later. I directed my first short in 2021. And then really during COVID is when I finally had the space to like start wanting to make something at all. But it wasn't even until, another year or two when that short film went on to like play at many festivals and was like released online publicly. Long after the first short played at festivals, and like maybe really when it was released online, because it kind of had like surprisingly widespread positive reception that I kind of didn't expect in a way. And it was my first short, and so that was like the first kind of small sign of like, oh, maybe this is something, there's like surprisingly an audience for something I've made.
Yeah, and how did that feel?
It felt really good. I think like my first short, Lucky Fish, ended up having like a surprisingly large like following on TikTok among teenagers, which was really sweet and, not something that was on my radar at all. When I first released the short, I went through like the cycle of like it maybe didn't get into like huge festivals, which is disappointing at first based on the way you're taught the ideal way things are supposed to go when you make a short film. But the same thing happens on features where, you're taught like you submit to these 5 top festivals, you get it in, it gets distributed by HBO, and then you're, I don't know, off to success.
And so like from that, you talked a little bit about like receiving some success from it. What was that success metric for you that made you be like, okay, this is something that people are really resonating with, or people are really enjoying?
That's a great question. I would say normally I feel like a way to measure that is like what festivals it gets into, or like if you won an award or something, or maybe
we're taught that, right?
Yeah, so we're taught that. Or like, oh, you premiere it at this cool festival, and then you get signed to like a cool agent,
like
or
check
like
these boxes, and then
but for me, it didn't get into like the biggest festival that I wanted it to, but it ended up playing at all these other incredible festivals that actually like were way better fits for it. And so I think for me it was just literally seeing it kind of go viral on TikTok and then get like 500,000 views on YouTube, not because of the metrics, but it was literally seeing the comments that like teens on TikTok were like what they were saying about it. Fish is like, it's like a queer teen romance. I really didn't make this movie to, get signed to a fancy manager. Like I really made this for like teens who could relate to this. And so I think seeing the reception from actual like viewers who were, maybe the age of the characters in the movie was very clarifying as far as, oh, this is why I made the movie. And like that to me was sort of, I was like, oh, this has achieved what I hoped it would.
And, especially like Lucky Fish, but like a lot of your films really do often explore transitional periods like coming of age. So like, why are these themes super important to you?
Another good question. Yeah, I love coming of age movies. And I think I really gravitate towards, stories about people in like these liminal spaces or like transitional periods in life where they're kind of like questioning things of like, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I living where I'm supposed to be living? Or like I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm really drawn to those kind of when they're on the cusp of something.
It almost seems like this was a story that you really wanted to almost consume yourself, that you felt the need to be able to create it, and then it was able to resonate with so many people because they were like, oh, that's something that, you know, whether it's heritage, whether it's community, whether it's the age, right? How has your like heritage, your identity, your community really filtered into like what you create?
I feel like everything I've written and that I've directed myself is just like comes directly out of, like, it's pretty close. Anyone who knows me, who's seen my movies, is like, oh wow, this is literally like not that far off. Like all the characters are usually inspired by like versions of myself from different ages or like people I know. A lot of it is drawing from like, you know, family, friends, people from past and present, and it's kind of fictionalized into a story, or it's based on events, and especially like a lot of the settings and locations are all places I've like spent a lot of time in. I think I also like to make films to sort of like act as a time capsule for certain periods or certain spaces or certain like feelings I'm going through. So it is nice to be super specific. I feel like as part of my process, I need to like actually have spent a lot of time there to feel like I can write those kind of stories from like a place that feels honest, I think.
And authentic, right?
Yeah,
like it's like you want to be able to, anyone who comes to this location or experiences this, like it's so much about feeling. So when you're like, you know, creating an idea or coming up with an idea, what's sort of like the moment that you have that you're like, okay, this is something that I'm feeling very passionate about or very strong, and like I want to be able to create something like around this experience or sort of this situation?
Yeah, I think usually if it's like a self-generated project, it's kind of like not to sound too mystical, but it's very kind of instinctive, and I feel like I just start slowly but surely, like there's some kind of thing just like
my mind plays like a movie, just so that you know, like I see like scenes like in my movie. I'm like, this is a movie, this is a scene.
It's just like images or just like something kind of just like comes in, and there's always ideas moving through my head, I feel like, but then every so often there'll be one that just kind of sticks, and sometimes it'll be like an image or like an emotion or like a feeling or maybe a conversation I had years ago in real life, or just something very specific, and I'll just like not be able to stop thinking about it. Like my second short, Manoa Valley, which was shot in my hometown, like I just randomly started having dreams about my high school, even though I hadn't, like I'd been living in New York for 10 years. Nothing crazy happened. I just started like thinking about my high school for some reason, and I was like, maybe I have like unfinished business, or like there's something here that I need to like investigate, and then I sort of like followed that thread to writing a script and all that.
No, I love that. And it's like that, like you don't know where art comes from, right? I believe that there's reasons why it's planted in your mind for why you're meant to kind of explore it a little bit more. And so when you're on set, do you feel that you more kind of communicate a vision, or do you communicate emotion? Like how do you really be able to align with the team in general, from behind the camera to in front of the camera, what it is that you want that scene to really encompass and really be able to portray?
I feel like vision and emotion is equally important, and they have to be like linked together in an ideal scenario. And so I would say I do a lot of prep work with my team of just aligning everybody emotionally, but also as far as just like what are we all making? Are we all on the same page? For the actors, like for everyone, actors, you know, production, costume design, like I'll make, you know, Pinterest boards. I'll have conversations with each person, you know, one-on-one of just like how they personally connect to it, and then figure out how like how through their department, you know, whether it's like the production design or the performances from the actors align. But I think maybe the step before that, that's like even more important. That's a really big part of the process for me, is just like, I spend a lot of time, like I don't like to micromanage people too much on set, but I spend a lot of time deciding kind of like who is the right person for the team. A lot of it is like personality, and are they going to be someone who's like, you know, really receptive, really like, you know, emotionally intuitive, someone who understands the story and also is going to be really excited to do a low budget movie with not a lot of resources and equipment. And I've kind of learned like that's also just as important for like creating the right environment and vibes for everyone to, you know, be set up for success on the shoot.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like making sure that everybody, and starting off by saying that like you're choosing who you collaborate with based on like who is understanding really what the end goal is, right? Making sure that everyone is aligned to be able to show up as themselves really authentically and be able to secure like a really safe space for everyone to show up as their authentic self, so that you can create the most beautiful piece of art that you're looking to create. So how do you really hold and cultivate space with your actors for like real or raw performances, but for everyone, you know, behind the camera and in front of the camera, to be able to have that space where they can show up and be themselves?
Yeah, I think it is super important, because I do feel like, yeah, like when people are set up for success and they're like comfortable, like I try to cultivate like a pretty collaborative environment, so it's like there's no stupid bad questions, you know.
I say that all the time. There's no such thing as a stupid question or a silly question.
Yeah, it's like, and you know, any suggestion is just a suggestion, and I think like maybe some directors, like if they're threatened by ideas, they're maybe insecure about their own vision a little bit. And I think if you know how to distinguish what the right choices for your movie are, I think you don't have to be so afraid of like hearing ideas. So I think, I mean, as long as you're, you know, obviously if you've selected the right people and you made sure that the vision is aligned, like then the ideas will usually be a good fit. I think, I mean, as far as the actors, I spend a lot of time casting. It's something that I really enjoy doing. But I do try to just, yeah, it's a lot of like one-on-one talking. I think maybe because I definitely feel like much more of a director than an actor, but maybe because I like learned how to direct kind of from acting in like people's shorts. I remember just my fear of like when I was acting in people's shorts, I was like, I just don't want to look stupid and embarrass myself or something like that. And sometimes I would feel like directors kind of would like keep actors at a like polite distance sometimes, which is both like to protect them from the chaos of like the set and all that's going on. But I feel like sometimes I just like wanted to be more like included or something. I like it when everyone's kind of in sync. Like a lot of my collaborators are their own they're also directors or like artists, and like I just like encourage them to bring all of that to their role.
Yeah.
And also, yeah, I think I before the shoot, just I have one-on-ones with my actors. I also try to just, you know, do some rehearsals. But those rehearsals are a lot of just like, maybe if there's two leads, making sure they're comfortable together. And I also try to just like talk to the actors I'm working with and just let them know like I'm not like judging your performance. Like if I only need one take. Yeah, I only need one take. Like if you try one and it's not, you don't think it's amazing, or it's just like super off base, like we'll just get another take, and if I feel like we got it, I'll let you know. Like, you know, I was just like, don't worry, like you can try something. It's not, you know, you don't have to be freaked out.
That's exactly what it is, because I think when you create that safe space, it gives them that more comfort to be able to be like, hey, let me approach you with an idea that we haven't even tried yet, right? Mm-hmm. So like, has there ever been a time where someone came out of like nowhere and just came up and was like, hey, like, here's an idea that I'm thinking of, and you're like, I didn't even think of that, and it just like made the film like so much better.
Yeah, honestly, that happens all the time and constantly. That's why I'm so like, please give me all of your idea. Like, it's really, I both like to give people, like, once I've brought everyone on, I'm like, you are fully in charge of your whatever department you're heading. Like, any feedback is like, please. It's really exciting to get to see people embody the role, and it makes the movie so much better too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
it makes the experience better too, because you're having so much fun while you're in it.
Yeah, it makes it so much better. And it's also, I think it's also like, if people feel more comfortable like in this space and like able to bring forward ideas, it's also like you can kind of take more risks, because I feel like, I guess mainly for performances, but also other people on set, of just like, if you're kind of afraid of messing up, in quotes, like, you kind of might make safe decisions, and that's not always like gonna lead to the best performance if you're constantly like a little too self-aware, or just like feeling like you have to watch yourself kind of, yeah. So I try to also just let people do their thing, and I'm like, I'll let you know if we need to do it differently, but if, you know, it's not because it's bad, it's just like, I want to try different things. I mean, these were small, but I think like they were talking about, you know, it's like a kind of a movie where they're like reminiscing over, you know, this past friendship that's progressed. It's like two women in their late 20s approaching their 30s, you know, just kind of reminiscing this time of transition. And she's talking about like, oh, I remember when I was like, you know, at that age after college, and I like thought I was going to move to Paris or something. And that actress is half Taiwanese. And she was like, I actually want to say Taipei, you know, she was like, can I change it to Taipei? And I was like, absolutely, you can. Like, it you know, it's small, but it made it more specific and like organic in a way that I was really happy about. But I feel like those things only come because the actors have like really committed to
absolutely.
the role and really making it their own.
But it also came from you providing that space and trusting them to be able to show up and be like, hey, like, I want to take a risk on this certain situation. I want to change this certain thing. And it's also, right, it's like a two-way street. It's like they're trusting you to input their decisions, but you're trusting them to also be able to take the risk as well. And so, like, all of it is sort of, you know, uncertainty with how it's all going to play out or pan out. And so in the creative space in general, there's so much uncertainty in our careers. Like, what's sort of your relationship with that?
Career uncertainty. I think about this every day. But I think because I worked in the industry, you know, in a more stable full-time position for a while, even though it is a lot more uncertainty since I've, you know, transitioned to focusing more on directing, I'm kind of like excited that it's uncertain, you know, because it just the transition of having the full-time job, like, it was more just like, wow, I guess I'm just gonna do this for the rest of my life until I decide otherwise. Kind of like a different sort of thing that made me nervous sometimes, especially because I was having those jobs when I was like pretty young. And so it's kind of new and exciting, at least for now, that I don't really know how like the next 3 years will go. It's kind of figuring it out project to project. I think I just try to tell myself, like, be really honest to myself about like what my goals and priorities are, which is just to like keep on making things, and then whatever job or lifestyle can support that, whether that means having a day job, whether that means, you know, directing, you know, commercially or for hire. I'm even at this point, like, I'd be happy to have a, you know, day job that had nothing to do with film, as long as it allowed for me the time, resources, and like mental capacity to keep on making things that I'm excited about, whether those are shorts or like, you know, more experimental things or features. Like, that's sort of my approach to it, in a way that's made me feel a little bit less freaked out, I'd say. Yeah.
No, I mean, totally. I mean, in life in general, I think the unknown can be scary, but there's also so much beauty and power in it.
Yeah.
Has there been like a set or director in general, especially as you're like shifting more into the director role, has there been a director that's opened your eyes to how you direct your own, or just like your approach to directing in general?
Ooh, yeah. I have so many. There were a couple directors I acted for, like before I had even started directing at all, who were
Yeah.
like really influential and quite helpful in me like choosing to direct. Like I acted in this short that was funded by a nonprofit that like adapted high school. It was like New York high school students' short stories that they would get adapted into short films if they won this like contest.
That's so
And
cool.
then, yeah, the nonprofit was like run by a independent film producer, and they would pair like, young Sundance directors like with these projects. And so it was like they would work in conjunction with the high school student to adapt it into a short film. So I like got to act in one of these, and that director who was like had shorts at Sundance and is like incredibly talented. It was like the first time working with like a non-student director. And I feel like I saw how like free they were in directing me and the other actor. It was a lot of like, well, here's the script, but let's just kind of, you can ad lib, you can, approach this differently. They were very like loose with how they brought things to life on screen, which is really cool to see, and let us put stuff in our own words, and was also just like very encouraging of me of like they were like, if you want to write something, like I'll give you notes in a draft, like I think you should just make this right now. And then I have another friend whose project I like consulted on, and she's always trying to like she's gotten me to elevate like my visuals a lot, and how to approach things, be a lot more precise visually, and just I don't know, I think I learned so, and I worked with one more director who was at her Columbia MFA degree program at the time, and she had like a theater background, which I don't know anything about theater, but she was having me do these like interesting like theater exercises to warm up, and just a lot of the scenes were like these long one take kind of theatrical scenes, and everyone's so different. It's really fun to get to be on other people's sets.
Yeah, I mean it's like their own sort of like creative mind that is also being able to be showcased into like the actual set itself. So it's like people who are really more with the flow, go with the flow. Like you'll just see like a lot more like improv, or you'll just see a lot more people expressing themselves versus people who do run like, okay, well, we have to follow a strict schedule, or we have to follow a specific timeline or order or things like that. But no approach is better than the other. And I think that's the same thing about our journey, right? It's like no journey is better than the other. We all are just on our own paths and looking to continue to create. And so, going back to you as a child, what was your childhood dream, and how does it fit into where we are now?
Wow. Honestly, I mean, I grew up in Honolulu. Like, I did not think film was certainly not on my radar at all. And I just, you kind of, the paths you know of are just based on what you see. And so I honestly think my childhood dream was like to be an English teacher at my high school. Which could still be, a backup.
Yeah, there's still time.
Not even a backup, like that could be a really fun career. But I was just like, oh, these are the closest thing to like creative adults I can relate to, and who seem to enjoy what they do. So that was my childhood dream. And then I I didn't discover filmmaking until or I didn't discover that filmmaking was a job / industry until way later in college. But yeah, I guess high school English teacher.
Nice. Okay. Well, that is all. So thank you so much for being with us today. Thanks for being you. And to everyone at home, always be you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. Did you enjoy this week's journey? So do we. So head on over to our YouTube channel where you'll find an extended version of this week's episode. And don't forget to give us a follow on all of our other socials at NextFoundArtist. Also, head on over to our website, nextfoundartist.com, to find and watch independent films from your next favorite artist.